This is the sluggo, slant and go.
Wednesday night in West Orange, New Jersey.
We had 87 degrees today. I know I always feel like we're turning into weathermen here, but we had 87 degrees. My bedroom's hot. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful day. I'm already complaining about hot weather.
I thought you were going to say you had 87 inches of snow.
It might be around the corner because
never happened in Texas, but after our little escapade in February, I think that's all out the window, right? I mean, them. And if you guys out there, you're in the right place, JP. All right, we're going to get this thing started off, Casey. Our friend Michael Pauk put out a podcast a day or so ago and gave his opinion on the rule changes in college football, namely the 2-point conversion is the part that I jumped in on, and the overtime rules. Or I guess it's one and the same thing, really. The 2-point conversion now being mandatory in the second overtime. And, he was wondering about why was this even necessary? And my answer was they want to end the games. They don't want them to go on forever. Maybe it's under the God want these games to go on and on forever. I saw someone on Twitter, I think it was 2018 or 17, this issue was the best game they'd ever seen. And I think that's completely ludicrous. It's not even a football game. The score was 31-31. Well, at the end of it was 43-41. And I hate all the stats are all blown up from defensive points given up in overtime. You know where they start from? They're from 2 feet away from the basket or 40 or 35 and just play football. Here's my deal about this. For overtime, he's for a first down, it's 5 yards in overtime. Like the MLB, that's the stupidest rule I saw somebody. Second is a great rule, because I think it was Ryan Cantor. More balls in play and more runs scored. And I said, well, that means you hate baseball because that's not what's happening. It doesn't make any sense to say, I like the first 9 innings perfectly fine, but it gets to extra inning, please change the rules. Dumb. Anyway, back to college football. I think I don't know about the going for 2 on the second and the 2-point shootout. I hate that idea. Just let the guys play football.
Yeah, I think you're onto something too. It reminds me a lot of what soccer does, right? And I happen to be a big soccer fan. And 90 minutes of soccer where everyone's running up and down the field, no timeouts, and getting hurt and stuff. But there's no real timeouts. They're running, they're playing full 45 minutes, and then if it's tied, place the ball and kick again one-on-one against the goalkeeper who can't move until the ball's kicked. It's basically like that. You're just defense now if you're going to go for 2 every single time. So we recommend it. 5 Foot Nothing podcast, 5 Foot Nothing, 100 Nothing podcast. Look it up on Twitter. He said it's known to love that Ole Miss game a couple of years ago. I think Eli Manning. Now that Manning was in a 7 overtime game. I think ones when they went to this model with. You automatically have points if you're starting up the ball back 17 yards. It's a 42. I picked the wrong commercials to be behind. We're having a dance party. No, not now, ladies, and we'll come back in a little bit.
Hey, JP said he wanted to be entertained, so here we go.
I lost my lamp a couple weeks ago, so now I have to have the TV on, but weird commercials are on. Anyway, I don't know why they changed it. I think they changed it just to say they changed it, and I'm not sure it makes it better, especially because they're going to – so when the overtimes flip, too, so if they start out on defense, the next overtime they start out on offense, right? Am I right here?
Yeah.
But they could be on defense twice. Right? They don't keep going back and forth. Isn't that the way that they're on offense in the second overtime? They're on offense.
The whole thing, the overtime, because the way it was, because they didn't want to play a whole quarter. Well, Texas A&M and LSU played about 6 hours. And over the overtime rules in South Carolina is based on penetrations. So the game could actually end with the score tie, the playoffs, and the other wouldn't because they got inside the 50 or the 40, whatever yard line it was twice.
Did you just call JP old?
But anyway, I just don't understand why brought baseball into this. I'll bring the NBA into this with their
That's the ball. Yeah.
advance the ball. It's like the other team did something great and they scored a basket in the last minute, and you're going to penalize them by giving the, like the Spurs went all 92 feet and tied the game up with 2 seconds to go. So you're going to penalize them by giving the other, not making the other team do that. All they got to do is go half court in 2 seconds. I know why it's there. I know what they're trying to do. I still think it's dumb. Anyway,
I just wanted to say I did. John Chansey had a good comment there a minute ago talking about how he likes it better than the NFL overtime, and I agree a little bit. I like the NFL overtime because they're actually playing a game. However, I think there needs to be, because the NFL can have ties. I don't like ties. What do they say? It's like kissing your sister. You don't like ties. That extra one in the standings, it doesn't look good. But there needs to be something. There's probably something in the middle. There should be something in the middle. There should be a middle ground there, right? Because at least the NFL is playing football and each team gets a chance. I like that aspect of it. And yes, college gets a chance too, but they're playing, half court basketball 5-on-5. It just doesn't make sense.
I just wish they'd keep the same rules. And I understand not having the kickoffs and all that stuff because that's when people get injured. But as far as how far you have to go and how you can score, basically now the kickoffs don't exist anymore, for the most part. And if they did, they just run it out of bounds. So give it to them at the 30 or 35 or somewhere around there and let them play regular doggone football till somebody wins the game. Just don't get it. Okay, the other thing Pop talked about, and you and I were texting back and forth about this, we wanted to kind of poke at him a little bit. He's all for expanded playoffs. Now, I know you have an angle on this, but here's my angle. How convenient for a guy whose team that doesn't play in a conference to want all conferences and, 3 or 4 at-large bids too. I mean, how convenient is that? Is that he doesn't want 6 because 6 would be unfair because some people would get a bye and other ones wouldn't. It's just awkward. Let's make it A in there. You know what you're going to have, Palk? You're going to have about 3 SEC teams, if not 4, playing each other. All it's going to do is
one of the things that Palk said in his show is that it talks about recruiting. And I hate that line. And I guess because I'm a Clemson guy, I hate that line because Clemson earned it on the field for many years. They came from next to nothing to build recruiting, starting with that dandy dozen or 7 guys with Taj Boyd and crew, and built through the recruiting that way. And so he said that basically it helps recruiting to have other teams in the playoff. And yeah, maybe it does, but why penalize the teams that are doing it and have done it and have built it if, so basically it's Clemson's fault that Ohio State, or not Ohio State, that's not a good example. Penn State or somebody else doesn't get in because Clemson's getting all the players or Alabama's getting all the players, or that's not basically what I'm saying is teams need to step up to Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State rather than Clemson and Alabama having to come down to the rest of the pack because, they're in it all the time. They win. So we need other teams in it for parity. If the coaches need to do it. It needs to start. Like people forget my 1998 3-8 Clemson team. I mean, people forget that because they're at the top now. People forget 6-6 going to play Mississippi State in the Peach Bowl 6 years in a row in the 90s. I mean, they built it from, and it starts with Dabo. They built from the bottom all the way up. His first year was 7-6. So I don't think they should. Teams like that, Alabama should not be penalized because they're so good. Clemson should not be penalized because they're in the ACC and they're so good. That's another thing. I hate I'll let you go in a second, but I hate the ACC. There's no one in the ACC. Yeah, there is. And why is that Clemson's fault that they can't be challenged right now in the conference? It's not.
Yeah. And I was going to say this year, if it was 8 in there, I'm assuming 8 would be Cincinnati this year. Who in the heck wants to see that? Do you want to see that?
I would have watched it for about 4 minutes because it would have been 63-0 with Devontae Smith with 37 touchdowns.
And that's a playoff game because Cincinnati deserves to be in the same conversation. It's ludicrous and it's crazy. And what it's going to do, it's going to devalue the regular season. And you're going to get teams with 2 and 3 losses. Oh, we don't really have to win this week and get beat up, trying to beat Alabama. We'll just take it easy. That 1 or 2 losses, we'll get in the playoffs because now there's 8 teams there and we'll be okay. You wanted to talk about the comment.
I want to, and I feel like we're picking on Palk, and I don't mean to because he does a really nice job with his show. But he was saying something about a couple years ago. Ohio State lost to Purdue, and they only lost 1 game. And how hard is it to go undefeated? They lost 41-14 to Purdue. So a team like that doesn't deserve to be in the playoff. If you're going to go somewhere and get blown out, they don't deserve to be in the playoff. I'm sorry. Yes, 1 loss is tough. Yes, every game means something. But 41-14 with Rondale Moore still scoring. 8 teams is the answer. But Rondale Moore still scoring touchdowns, kind of like Clemson fans get from everybody else that West Virginia just scored again. Rondale Moore is still scoring on Ohio State. So that was just my one thing I wanted to light him up about, because he definitely said, they only lost to Purdue that year. Yeah. Don't get blown out by Purdue, and then you get there,
by 1,000. Hey, yeah, I told Palk he was going to be the star of the show, and he is checked in on Twitter. Thanks for upping the Twitter number. I mean, the Twitter. Listen to me. YouTube numbers. I think it's now. Let me look. 6. Okay, 6 views on YouTube. Thanks, Palk. Thanks for checking in, buddy, and thanks for putting up with the rants. We were texting back and forth today. Casey and I were saying how you do your research and you show's very entertaining, but we don't agree. I know it's going to 8. It's going to 8. All right. It's going to, because that's what we are in America. As you said, everybody's got to win. Everybody's got to participate. Everybody's got to feel good about everything. And they'll want to do it more than 8, or they want to do 16 or 12 or some other number. It's just, there's never enough in America today. This rant is over for me. Bama says, good shot, JP. Bama and Cincy should never play past week 2. And look who checks in here, Casey.
Wow.
I'd watch Alabama play every day. It's SEC Zach, as we were going to call him. Oh, no, next year when he does the picks, we're going to call him MGD Zach Logs Parker. So Long Island Iced Tea, please. Okay. Well,
I'll take 2. Yeah.
Oh, Palk's bartending.
Yeah,
no doubt. All right. We talked about playoff suspension. Let's talk about some spring games. I did some in-depth research on these spring games today, last week, Casey, and here's what I had. I let that slip that I did the research today. Sam Howell is back. They're looking for some. This is North Carolina, by the way. Max Fentz is, looking pretty good in the spring. Max always look good in the spring. The problems usually happen in the fall. Sam Howell was back. They're looking for some answers at running back, though, not bad from what I actually saw a few plays. And they got some guys back there. They have a lot of depth and talent along the defensive line. It's something to keep in mind if Clemson and North Carolina get together for the ACC championship game. But here's the deal. They open their season on a Friday against Virginia Tech, which could be fairly interesting early on an ACC game to kick off the season.
Yeah, I can't say this, right, as a Clemson person, but I like North Carolina. I do like Mac Brown a little bit. I think they're good. I think Sam Howell is going to get that preseason love where he's the best of the best of the best. You're going to hear about that Trevor Lawrence 2.0 kind of thing. They do have to replace a lot on offense, though, and other than him. Their running backs, they have that two-headed monster back there that are probably going to go 3rd and 4th for the running back position. They're going to be good. I did like their defensive line there in the spring game. They're tough, and it all starts in the trenches. Their offensive line looked okay too, so they're going to be tough. And we're going to hear about it all summer long about who's going to be the team that can challenge Clemson this year. And with Sam Howell, that they're probably going to get the pub again.
Hey, everybody's in the comments tonight. We love it, guys. Appreciate it so much. Yarber's in here. Zach's in here. JP's chiming in. He says he thinks UNC is going to take a big step this season. He didn't say whether it was forward or backwards, but a big step. So So appreciate all the comments, all of the discussion, fellas. That's what we're here for. Next up, in my neck of the woods, Texas. There's a quarterback battle brewing between Casey Thompson and Hudson Card. Hudson Card's from Lake Travis, famous quarterback lineage there too. Often talk about Westlake and Breeze and Foles and Sam Ellinger and now our boy, Cade Klubnik. But Lake Travis has had some famous ones too. Baker Mayfield, this Hudson Card fella. And what is the guy who went to Texas who fell on his face?
Colt McCoy.
Gail Gilbert.
Same thing.
Close. Colt McCoy is from Tuscola Gymnad, a town of about 17. But anyway, here's my takeaway with this whole thing. Casey Thompson looked great in the bowl game in the second half. I mean, he lit up, I think it was Colorado, if I remember correctly. Hudson Card, didn't hardly play at all. He might still be a freshman for all I know. I think everybody can be a freshman from last year. But the fanboys are so into Texas football that they're reading between the lines. Do you know how they know Hudson Card has the inside track to beat out Casey Thompson?
No idea.
Well, it seems that he was the holder for the orange and the white team. And Tua Tagovailoa was the holder, even though he was the starting quarterback, and so was Mac Jones. Ergo, Hudson Card will be your starting quarterback. You heard on this show first. For the Texas Longhorns in the fall. I was thinking, dude, maybe the other guy had a cramp and couldn't bend over or something. Who the heck knows, right?
Message boards are the best.
But in April, they declared that Hudson Card would be the quarterback because he was the holder, and that's the way they did it at Bama. The other takeaways was, much like a lot of teams across the nation, there's a lack of explosiveness at receiver. I can't even say that, explosiveness at receiver for the Longhorns. But the guy we talked about last week who had unforeseen circumstances and he had to not go to Michigan, he's at Texas now. He found some circumstances in Texas that apparently he liked a little bit better. We'll talk about this in a minute in the recruiting. Not only is half of the guys in the transfer portal, there's at least 3 guys from 2021 who have transferred out, right? 2021 class that signed 2 months ago. At least 3 big times. This Xavier Worthy is one of them. But, Casey, the Longhorns are back.
They are back, and I am interested in watching them with Sarkisian because everyone thinks Texas is one of those fan bases that gets really, really excited and probably has a little bit inflated ego on their team, thinking they're a little bit more than they are. But with Sark, he brings a little bit of life to that fan base, and I think that they believe that he ran that offense at Alabama, and I think he's missing a couple key pieces, namely Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Najee Harris, even Mac Jones, who I'm not high on, but he was good enough to get those boys the ball, right? So yeah, I mean, let them have it. Let them have it. I didn't see much of that game. I did see some highlights of it, but nothing really stood out to me. But I'm one of those guys that nothing really stands out to me in the spring anyway.
And they're also missing about 29 offensive linemen that are 4 and 5 stars. Also, JP says Sark in Texas, one more of the intriguing storylines to watch in my eyes. Definitely agree with that. Well, I'm just being facetious because if you think you hear a lot about South Carolina, if you live in Columbia, try and live in Austin, Texas, and you hear everything is Longhorn. I'm going to go to my Longhorn truck rental to get my Longhorn hamburger, to get my Longhorn jockstrap, to get,
I love Longhorn Steakhouse, I'll be honest with you.
Go eat lunch at the Longhorn Steakhouse and have a beer at the Longhorn Bar and Saloon. Everything is Longhorn and everything has horns on it. But anyway, okay, up next. Now, I'm excited about this one, Casey. It's Oklahoma. They're loaded on paper, just like every year. Paper. If they only played on paper, they'd be really good, especially a wide receiver. And for my guy, Spencer Rattler. Now, I actually have a futures bet on Spencer Rattler to win the Heisman Trophy this year. And Clemson fans, don't get upset because my second bet is on Mr. DJ Uiagalelei. So I've got 2 bets on the Heisman futures. One of them is Spencer Rattler. One of them is DJ. But anyway, Jaden Hazelwood was a standout wide receiver. Now, Dusty Dvorak said the defense finally looks like they belong among the top, and they're going to, be able to let Oklahoma make a run in the playoffs this year. Hey, I don't believe Dusty. I want to see it. Remember, Dusty was the one who said Shaq Lawson was on the Oklahoma team bus doing whatever. How stupid was that? And they still hired that guy. And now he's saying Oklahoma defense, it looks great. Don't believe it. I believe they're going to score 50 points and run all over the Big 12. And if they win a playoff game, I'll say good job.
Yeah, they don't have to be great on defense. They have to be good enough. So I think that's the national storyline, though, with Oklahoma, is that I think the fan base and kind of the narrative says that if we're better on defense, well, maybe we'll get into the playoff and hence win a playoff game. And they are good. They're great every year. They're great, not just good. They have a quarterback from Jalen Hurts and now Spencer Rattler, and they got frisbee catching dogs at receiver, and they usually have a scat little running back that's very good. They just have to be good enough in the Big 12 on defense, and maybe they can take a giant leap and win a playoff game.
I think we all agree, JP, the defense needs to take. And when I hear it from a alumni of the Oklahoma State defensive line, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt until we see it on the field. And John Chansey says he thinks OU will be contender. I think we all agree on that. I think they're going to make the playoffs. That's not the question. I think the question is, can they win a playoff game?
When I realized that Oklahoma defense wasn't any good, this goes back to probably 2014 when Clemson played them in the Mighty Car Care Russell Athletic Bowl, which I actually went to in Orlando, and Cole Stout threw all over that defense, and taking nothing away from Cole Stout because that Clemson team was pretty good. And obviously the next year with Deshaun, they won the whole thing. But that's when I realized, wow, this team is. I thought Clemson was going to get blown off the field that day, and it wasn't that way at all. I was pleasantly surprised.
Well, I thought Cole Stout would throw for a couple of touchdowns, but I thought he'd throw for him to the Oklahoma defense. And the way the season was going in that Georgia Tech game ruined my life. Still have nightmares. Okay, let's go across the state here. The Texas Roundup will be over after this one. Haynes King looks like the quarterback coming out this spring. He's being portrayed online by your message board geniuses as the savior. They're talking about him in all kind of ways. He's thrown 3 passes in his career. But, he's the next great thing. Zach Calzada is the competition. I'm not sure that means a lot. I don't know Zach. I didn't look him up. But anyway, but Haynes King is the new Johnny Manziel, though. Tornado watch.
You got to get that?
No, it's a tornado watch. I might get it. But again, this is a team that's not very explosive. You know how Spiller didn't play. Isaiah Spiller didn't play. Everybody's favorite running back from Texas A&M and number 28 with the name Spiller. It's got to be great. But he didn't play. But this is a team that's not explosive. Now, I heard last year they were one of the least explosive teams in the nation. And we know from recent experience that Jimbo doesn't care if he loses the game, as long as he can march 15 plays, 71 yards to lose by 2 touchdowns in 7 minutes and 28 seconds with 7:58 when the clock started, when the drive started. But they're not explosive except for Spiller, it appears, and they had a lot of losses at wide receiver.
Yeah, Haynes King he was highly touted coming out of high school, so we'll see. Not as highly touted maybe as a Spencer Rattler, but we'll see what they have. It should be fun to watch them play. I mean, how they ended last season. They thought they deserved to be in the playoff, and maybe this year they get over the hump, but they still have to play Alabama and LSU and that SEC West this year. So Jimbo Fisher can probably have a statue built of him if he ends the season 5th every year. And you know what? I think there's a lot of people out there, myself included, that think that he believes that that's okay, that that's all he needs to do, because he's already got his national championship with Florida State, and he can go to the College Football Hall of Fame that way.
No doubt. A championship coach forever and ever and ever, no matter what happens after that.
Spoiler alert, I'm not picking A&M this year.
Well, ironically, we'll get to that in my rant about the media darlings. There's a hint. We've already talked about both media darlings that I've heard about, but they are one of the teams, A&M, who lost a 2021 recruit. Not just any 2021 recruit. They lose 4-star wide receiver Shadrack Banks, who was 112th player overall, but he had been committed for almost 2 years. He was on campus for about 30 seconds, and he's gone. It's just the strangest thing. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's a personal issue or whatever, but he was committed. I thought I wrote the date down. I didn't, but almost 2 years he was committed to Texas A&M. Didn't last till the summer. He got through the spring game and said, "See ya, wouldn't want to be ya," and he's out of there. So bizarre happenings already with this transfer rule. All right, Tennessee, not our final one, but Tennessee. 10 years after Chad Morris revolutionized college football, I like to think that as a Clemson fan, right? In 2011, with a high-speed, up-tempo offense, Tennessee said, "Hey, that's a good idea. We ought to try that out." 10 years later, and they decided they were to spread. I didn't hear a lot about this game. I just heard there was a lot of stuff going on. It was real fast. They didn't tell me if it was real good. They just said it's real fast. Because remember that first spring game under Chad, Taj Boyd was like 4 of 23 or something horrendous. And we were all like, okay, what are we doing here? Yeah. But so it could turn out to be a good thing for Tennessee, but, who knows?
Yeah, well, he's got to win. Jeremy Pruitt needs to win there. So I think it's one of those things that you throw your base away and try to make those visits to those explosive offenses. Make those visits to Charlotte to talk to the old LSU passing coordinator. Maybe you take that trip to Clemson and talk to Tony Elliott. And maybe at this point you hire somebody that can change the way that you've been thinking, really. But yeah, I think that it's time for Tennessee to change something, because he's on the hot seat, no question about it, and he needs to do something profound this year for that fan base to want him to still be around.
And I think
he's not around. That's the dumbest 2 minutes of Sluggo that we've ever had. It's the coach from UCF.
Yeah, Heupel. Yeah, I was going to say
brain fart.
I was going to say they do something. They did do something. They changed coaches. Ole Miss. We don't need to spend any time on Ole Miss. There's lots of offense and not much defense, just like every year under Lane Kiffin, anywhere he goes. South Carolina. Now, this was an interesting one to me. Dollar for the vets. Much worth it, because this was intriguing. Shane Beamer compared Luke Doty to Jalen Hurts. And I don't know, he said, when I was at Oklahoma, so I know what Jalen Hurts looked like. And Luke Doty reminds me of Jalen Hurts. So Philadelphia Eagles quarterback in the future, Luke Doty. I don't know what else South Carolina has. One thing I did want to say about A&M is I heard they had 9 drop passes. So Haynes King might have to run for his run if he's going to be, the superstar everybody thinks so.
Yeah.
But anyway, Beamer compared Luke Doty to Jalen Hurts, and I thought that was kind of funny and wanted to include it in the show.
Well, we have to remember that Shane Beamer was at South Carolina too, and they had a guy named Brandon McElwain who was the next coming of the best quarterback in the history of the world. And then they had, you just keep rolling the names that you've never heard of anymore because they didn't pan out to anything. But there was a couple years in a row that South Carolina had the guy behind the guy.
Jake Bentley.
Yeah, Jake Bentley was one. The quarterback who doesn't play quarterback anymore from down in Charleston, Fort Dorchester, who he wanted to come to Clemson, but Clemson wanted him as a DB, so he goes to South Carolina because South Carolina wants him as a quarterback, and he's playing wide receiver. So it's funny to see. So we have to remember that too. So yes, Beamer was at Oklahoma, absolutely, we know that. But he was also at South Carolina, where they definitely talked up to the next guy.
And the next guy, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my takeaway from all of this, there were 2 of these teams that stood out as the media darlings, as the winners of the spring game hype into the summer and going to start off the fall as contenders, champions, no matter what happens, they're going to be talked as great. That is North Carolina, which we all, we knew that was going to happen. My theory there is Mac is one of them. He was one, he's a good guy, a nice guy, and he was a media member. So there's a tie in there, and they're going to pump that up more than ever. But North Carolina has improved. So, and the ACC is not the toughest conference in the world. So, there's a chance. There is a chance North Carolina has a good season. The other one was Texas A&M. I heard some podcasts national podcasts where they talked about A&M and how this really could be their year, even though the quarterback, only has thrown 3 passes in college. Now, that's a problem for Clemson and DJ because he only played 2 games, even though one of them was at Notre Dame and the other one he rallied him from 18 points down. That's a problem for Clemson. But it's not a problem, apparently, at Texas A&M if you've only thrown 3 passes and had 9 drops in the spring game. I heard their schedule is easy, the first 7 games, except for Alabama, which, they're marking down as a loss. But they could be 6-1 in November, and you never know what could happen. And boom. Texas A&M and North Carolina are going to be, listen, mark my words, over the summer into the season, until they fall flat on their face, they're going to be the 2 teams, mark them, that are the hype, the media darlings hype center, A&M Tar Heels.
I agree. I can't even add anything to it because I think Jeremy Pruitt is still the coach at Tennessee.
You have been banned. Okay, recruiting updates. Since we last talked, Jacoby Matthews, a 5-star, number 30 overall, second in his position, third in the state of Louisiana, becomes LSU's third 5-star of the 2022 class. Now, I don't know if Coach O is going to get him to win the national championship again, but he's still recruiting like he is.
He's always been a great recruiter. He was a good recruiter at Ole Miss. He was a good recruiter at Southern Cal. He just, he had kind of the stigma that he wasn't necessarily the best guy for the head job. But I think he's gotten smart over the last couple of years and has surrounded himself with some really good coaches. And he's a great figurehead. And he's people love him. I love him, and I'm not a fan of LSU. I just think he's great because he's real and you can't understand what he says, and he's eating rocks most of the time, but he's fantastic. So, I don't expect anything less. He's got 5 stars in Louisiana, and it's like Max Fence. He's keeping them at home.
JP loves when Tennessee's a dumpster fire. Boy, you've been a happy guy for the last 10 years or so there, JP. Speaking of JP, I wrote a quick article on Bubba Chandler and Will Taylor for Clemson Junkies. As I worked through that and thought about it, yes, I actually thought about it, JP. I worked through it and thought about it, and I don't see how these guys choose football. Now, people with Clemson colored glasses on say, who wouldn't want to play football for Clemson? Well, if I had the choice between $3 million or $2.5 million and playing backup quarterback for Clemson, I'm going to take the money, and I'll tell you why. What happens if and somebody, this is predicated on someone saying baseball will always be there? Well, A, no, it won't. And B, what happens if, you're standing in for DJ and somebody just, Brent Venables' kid decides he wants to show out and knocks you silly and tears your labrum or whatever, a shoulder injury. Is being the backup quarterback worth potentially losing all that money? I don't know. I mean, sometimes your life, you've got to make decisions. And as it said in some of the articles I read researching that, it's a tough decision. But I can't see giving up potentially $2 or $3 million to be a backup quarterback. Nobody wants a 22-year-old pitcher in rookie ball, right? They want you in the majors by that time. That's why they're going to draft you that high. I don't see it. I could be wrong. And I think JP, I saw a comment that he said they have a better chance of keeping Taylor than Chandler because Chandler's throwing 96, and that's coveted in MLB.
I think you're exactly right, though, with what you said. There's 3 million reasons why he would choose baseball over football. And I don't want to – I know I'm dating myself, but there was a guy at Florida State named Chris Winkie who went – so I think the opposite is true of whatever that poster said. Football will always be there.
Yes.
Because once he steps foot in the Major League Baseball, now he can't play baseball again, but he can come back to college. He still has his 4 or 5 years of eligibility that he can play. There was a 26-year-old freshman quarterback at Florida State, Chris Winkie, who went on to a short NFL career because he was already 40 years old when he got drafted. But Chris Winkie was a very good baseball player who just panned out. It didn't pan out, excuse me, and came back to Florida State. So football will always be there, and not even Clemson. He can go anywhere to play football later if it's not going to work out in baseball.
Well, there's a handful of those guys. Brandon Wheaton's another one, right?
Yeah.
Ended up quarterbacking for the Cowboys for a while. He's 27, and he didn't even play for BYU. 27-year-old quarterback.
That's right.
JP dropped the link to the story there. Thanks, JP. Appreciate that. Just really, and yeah, it's going to be hard to turn that kind of money down.
For an 18-year-old kid? Heck yeah.
Well, and
that can go a long way if he's smart.
If the risk was lower, I could, kind of see it, maybe, but
play for free, play for money.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm old and cynical now, but that's not even a decision.
Set for life or be a crash test dummy for a Clemson defense. No, thank you.
I love Clemson like nobody else. I'm going to pro baseball.
Also did a story on Eli White for Clemson Junkies. Also, I got into this recruiting a little bit. I'm getting into it, as you'll see here coming up. Ohio State, they lost a 2022 commitment, so now they only have like 112. I think that's Deshaun McCullough. He's a 50th ranked overall player. We're not talking chopped liver here, right? Sixth best athlete. And he went to Indiana. Here's the deal. He's from Bloomington, and he's got like 9 brothers that play for Indiana. But he chose Ohio State, but he decided he changed his mind. He's going to Indiana. So even Ohio State, it's not a transfer, so to say, but it's a decommitment, which kind of makes perfect sense. We talked about Shadrack Banks and A&M, Xavier Worthy, who found, unforeseen circumstances is he wanted to go to Texas. Apparently, he does not have the plague or cancer or anything. He just thought Texas was a better option than Michigan. And your guy here, we're going to call him your guy that JP had a story on, Jaden Bellamy, a 3-star corner at Bergen Catholic. Now, he's got a Clemson offer. What I found weird about this guy, he's not just got a Clemson offer. All the big boys are offering him, and he's a 3-star rated 427 overall. So I'm guessing there's going to be a big bump in his rating in the near future.
Yeah, he's the number 1 player here in New Jersey, I believe. If he's not, he's very close. He comes from the best program in the state right now, anyway, at Bergen Catholic. A lot of the Catholic schools in the state are the tops. Comes from the same high school as Justin Guarantano, as people. JP loves Tennessee, so he may know that name. But yeah, it's he's a good little player. He really is, and that program there sends a lot of kids to the Big Ten. They really do. They send a lot of kids to and BC really too. BC is another one. It's in the northern part of the state. He's also a running back, so he's been getting a lot of love there. I know my buddy Tim here, my Rutgers insider, is hoping and praying that he stays in state because this is one of those kids that he's a 3-star in what is it, 24/7. I believe he's a 4-star at Rivals, and could get a bump with some camp tours this year. He's a good player. 427, it seems high to me. Or low, I guess. Low to me, but he's probably maybe not a top 150, but he's probably a top 200 player in the country. He's that good. He's just a little undersized.
Maybe that's part of it. Well, my theory, though. I don't care, 427 or whatever. When Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State are offering this kid, he's not going to end up 427 for long. And he's got an Ohio State visit coming up, I think, next month. And John Chase says, get him on campus. Jersey kids love Clemson. Well, Casey.
Guilty.
Got Casey on campus, and then he drank all the beer.
Well, that's what I've been telling JP and Marty that my dad was actually the boss of the head coach of BC. It's one of those things. So he was actually the head coach at my high school for 3 years before he got the head job at Bergen Catholic. And that's a step up. And his brother is a recruiting, I think he's their recruiting coordinator at Rutgers. He at least has a part of that. So they think that Jaden Bellamy's got a chance to go to Rutgers, but man, you get the Ohio State poll, you get the Clemson poll, you get the Alabama poll. This kid, I think he'll fly. I think he'll go somewhere out of state, and he's okay with that from everything that I'm reading and hearing here in New Jersey. I don't think he's going to be a Rutgers guy, unfortunately, as good as their recruiting class is.
As an aside, something that's not on our list here to talk about is what's up with Don Bosco Prep? Aren't they usually the best team in the state of New Jersey?
They certainly were, and they've kind of not fallen off, I wouldn't say, but they're probably – so the top three teams in the state are Bergen Catholic, Don Bosco, and St. Peter's Prep. And St. Peter's Prep has kind of jumped Bosco. They lost their coach. They had some scandal a couple of years ago. They lost him, and then they brought in a recruit a former player that went to BC. His name's Mike Toll. They had Mike Teal and Mike Toll. Teal was the quarterback at Rutgers. Toll was a fullback at BC. They brought him back to be the head coach. Didn't really work out. The old head coach moved on to Bergen Catholic to be an assistant, aka recruiting coordinator. I didn't put that out there. And therefore, it's kind of fallen back a little bit, but they're still getting players.
Okay. All right, Clemson Minute here. Let's talk a little bit. We had a transfer in the last week, Ches Malusi. You and I kind of did not disagree, but we had different thoughts on this. You thought maybe he would get a good amount of playing time this year behind Lynn J. Dixon, I'm assuming. I didn't see that. I saw the younger guys in the spring game maybe not look fantastic or great, but it looked like they had a higher ceiling, as they say, in the game. And I think he realized that his playing time is going to be limited. That's a deep running back room. We hate to lose anybody, but he decided to move on and wish him good luck.
Absolutely, and I think JP said it in one of the posts on social media. There's no real surprise here. He was having a hard time even getting on the field in the spring game. Now, I did believe coming out of the offseason or coming into the offseason that he was going to be the guy behind Lynn J. Dixon. I just from the amount of touches he had a season ago and the amount of good runs that I believe he had, especially tough between the tackles, I didn't know if they were going to have another guy like that. He was kind of the bruiser to Lynn J's kind of scat back. So, yeah, it's always – you hate to lose them, but it comes back to that phrase a couple of weeks ago that I said they're recruiting these players to take that guy's job. So I think with guys like Kobe Pace and
Maffa.
And Will and Maffa and Shipley, I just think that, that room's packed, and we shouldn't be surprised that Clemson lost one. And,
Mikey Dukes, they never. I wouldn't be surprised if that's not the only one they lose. And
I think JP said something too about a linebacker. Wouldn't be surprised if a linebacker were to leave too. So just hope it's not Levanta Bentley.
For the podcast folks, Jason Priester comments, I thought the spring game showed where he was in the pecking order. I fully expected it back to transfer, but was kind of surprised it was Malusi. I think Casey's right there with you, JP. All right, the baseball team sweeps Wake Forest. Now, I'm also in the midst. What's the Clemson Junkies week here, JP? So put the check in the mail. I'm writing a story for the Clemson Junkies on the baseball team, who finally got to 500, 18-18 with two close and exciting wins over the weekend. They actually swept all three from Wake Forest, but Saturday and Sunday were pretty exciting with the Davis Sharp blast, and I do mean blast. And
Grice too.
Yeah, Grice too. Davis Sharp had a walk-off, and then Dylan Brewer had a home run to put them up 3-2, and they held on in the final game. But looking ahead, I thought, well, maybe they can keep the streak going, and I'm going to give the story away here. Clemson's last losing baseball season was 1957. In 1964, they had a 500 record, but other than that, since 1957, they've been above 500. This could be the first time in 64 years that Clemson has a losing record in baseball, because the 14 games they have left, 3 with Louisville, Georgia Tech, Florida State, and Duke, and their last 2 non-conference games, USC Upstate, who crushed them earlier in the year, and South Carolina, who's number 11 in the RPI and is 2-0 against the Tigers. So uphill sledding for baseball.
Yeah, but they definitely played a more exciting brand of baseball, and it's hard to say with 4-3. And I guess 2, 4, 3 games, and I guess I'm the eternal optimist when it comes to Clemson baseball. But I actually turned it on this weekend because I got a little frustrated when the softball team went down to NC State. So I turned it off for a second to turn back on the baseball game, and they just look like they're having fun again. And that's all I think that Clemson people are asking for, because it really felt for the entire first half, 3/4 of the season, they were playing so tight, and they looked like they were having fun again. They were getting good pitching. Heck, what did I say early on in the season? They're giving up 3 runs. You should win those games. And guess what? They did. So they gave up 3 runs, I believe, every game this weekend, and won all 3 games. So things are looking up a little bit. Tough schedule. I watched the Georgia Tech team just lambaste the Georgia team last night, and that's their midweek game. So Louisville is a top 10 program. Georgia Tech is right there if they're not. Florida State is Florida State, and Duke's very good as well. So a tough 12, 14 games remaining, that's for sure, especially looking at, you're hoping for a reprieve, and you got USC Upstate who beat the bejesus out of you, and then your cross-state rivals, South Carolina, who's one of the top programs in the country.
No doubt. Hey, softball, those North Carolina State games you talked about, some of the – we have said that softball's been very interesting because there have been a lot of blowouts and home runs and just crazy stuff happening for Clemson softball. But I found those games fascinating. They were finally challenged by somebody. And that's why I said when Nelson helped us out and sent you and I the latest rankings, that's probably about right. I was advocating earlier in the season to move them up. But once I saw, okay, they're not going to steamroll everybody. They're going to steamroll some of the lesser teams. And then I saw Oklahoma play Oklahoma softball and went, oh, okay, that's the number 1 team I've seen maybe ever in the history of softball. I've been putting out some of their highlights on the Press Sports app, and it's been just, Cagle hits home runs, and she hit one over the scoreboard. We're going to talk about that in a second. But Oklahoma has a team full of girls that do that. They got like 27 home runs, and one girl, or young lady, I'm sorry. But anyway, they're clutch. This Clemson softball team is clutch, and they're still on a roll. Yeah,
they're having a great season. Valerie Cagle got another national award this week. They're fun. Literally, I say it every week. They're fun to watch. And, if you're not watching, you should definitely watch at least a couple innings. Even the game that I got frustrated that they went down, it was almost, I guess I was scared that they were going to ruin the streak. But then I turned it back on because they walked Valerie Cagle with the bases loaded. Yeah, there you go. It is. JP Priester saying the softball series provided us with some of the worst decision-making from a coach I've seen in a while. Someone tell him thanks. There is no question about it. Even though there was 2 outs, you walked the bases loaded to get the tying run to third with a girl who hit a home run in her last at-bat. So it was a really tough decision for NC State, but that's what Valerie Cagle does to opposing teams. She reached base 14 straight at bats before that streak was broken in the last game. But I believe she then started another streak back up. I think it's 2, if not 3 at bats. She's just, her and Barry Bonds, I believe, are the 2 people that teams are walking with the bases loaded so that they don't have to face her. She's very special, and we're very lucky that hopefully she stays on campus for another 3 years.
John Chansey wants to give the golf team some love, and I forgot to put that in the rundown, but ACC champions. I know a third person who was walked with the bases loaded. My friend that I talk about in the comments of that story about Will Taylor, the one who was drafted first, 19th overall in the first round by the Angels. Was it Little League? No, it was Pony League. It was Pony League. No, it was Little League. We had 2 halves, 10-game halves, and the winner of the first half played his winner of the second half for the championship. In the first half, in 10 games, he hit like 19 home runs, right? And in the second half, 10 games, he had 6 official at-bats, 4 home runs, 2 doubles. He's walked every other time, even with the bases loaded. Wow. It just wasn't worth it. And so that's the third person.
At 12.
Yes. We knew where his future was, and it was in the major leagues.
That's funny.
Golf, talk about another wild finish. I didn't see the golf. I read about it on Twitter. If you have anything to say about it, Beef. No.
Unfortunately, I don't know the guys, but I know that the number 4 player in the country for Clemson played the number 1 player in the country, and that came down to a final hole. Then I believe it was 2-2 going into, it was match play, 5 matches, and it was 2-2 going into the final match, and I believe they went 22 holes, 21 holes. JP might know, but I know they went into quote overtime, and I believe the Florida State kid had a putt to tie from 5 feet or in and missed. So it was one of those finishes that you're just like, ooh.
So how does golf overtime work? Do they put the ball 2 inches from the cup like they do in football?
Yeah, they have a putting contest. They bring the clown's mouth out, and you have the windmill
over the windmill into the clown's mouth. Okay, you had a little poll. We'll finish up the Clemson 3 minutes with you had a poll on Clemson's going to add a new women's sport. A lot of people are saying, "Wow, the way softball went, it's going to be great." I wouldn't guarantee that. I have no opinion on this because the sports that were named, I never played or watched or saw. Never played a women's sport. Okay. You know what I mean? None of my sisters played them. They played basketball and softball, so I'm more familiar with those. I don't have an opinion, but what'd your poll come out and say?
My poll came out to lacrosse being the I guess the sport that wins the poll. What I did was I looked at ACC sports that have women's sports that Clemson doesn't have. So there are 2 really that they have, and that's not fencing. It's field hockey and lacrosse. So it just leads you to believe that you think, there you go, 3rd hole of the playoff. You would think that it's one of those 2. However, there is other sports that aren't necessarily NCAA sanctioned, but I believe after reading numerous articles about it that they can get away with, like equestrian, which probably makes sense because they already have an equestrian center and an equestrian team. Maybe that's one that they do. Maybe it is a fencing or something of that nature, and kind of join a CAA or a Big Ten conference that has those. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know where they go from here, but I think if they're going to follow that same model that the softball team did, where they're probably going to hire a coach and have a couple 2 years before they're actually playing to kind of get a roster together and play. But those 2 sports, for women's lacrosse, I know men's lacrosse a little bit because my stepson plays high school and his dad played at Loyola, which is a Maryland, which is a good lacrosse program. So I do follow that a little bit. But I don't know anything really about women's lacrosse. I don't know who's even really good. I think Northwestern is the number 1 team in the country. Maryland was usually good too. Maryland's definitely good at field hockey. But those are the 2 sports that I think you would probably lean towards having. But I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see. There's another dollar for the bets, 23 now. I would just, all I would say was temper your expectations. I haven't had any beer and I can't speak. Temper your expectations, because I don't think the lacrosse crowd is going to be like the softball crowd who waited 40 years seemingly for a softball team and just happened to get a very, very good one. I'm not saying they won't be good. I'm just saying the reaction to it is not likely to be the same as the reaction.
There's a legit Hall of Fame softball coach. Whatever, college Hall of Fame, softball Hall of Fame, whatever it is, he is a legit Hall of Fame nominee.
Starting your football program with Bear Bryant as your coach or something.
Basically, yeah. He's probably top 5 coaches ever in the sport of women's softball. So I don't know if there's somebody out there for lacrosse that manages that. Maybe the old coach of Maryland for field hockey. I don't know. I don't know. But I think we do have to temper our expectations because this team has been so successful. We're just going to, as Clemson fans and faithful, we're thinking that, they're just going to come in and compete. But, there could be some excitement because it's something new and fresh and something that you never really see down in South Carolina.
I definitely think there will be some excitement. I'm just saying not on the same level. That's all I'm
I'm with you.
Hey, last week on the Chop and Beef, Zach again stole the show. And so I had to drop a video Friday to make fun of him because he said, you had your orange drink when you were a kid, and you asked him, kind of rhetorically, what kind of, didn't you have a drink that you, didn't you have a drink that you couldn't get a hold of as a kid and you missed it? And Zach said, Miller Genuine Draft, which was hilarious. And it's why you people should listen to the Chop and Beef Show. What do you guys have on tap for tomorrow? On tap. I even set it up.
We still haven't found MGD anywhere. And we don't really have much going yet, but the pre-show meeting, aka our text chain, has been on fire this week, so I have to go back through it. I should have prepared a little bit tonight to tell you what was coming up. We have some doozies of stories. We have some things that we're going to talk about, no question, that are a little off color and a little off base, and by a little I mean a lot. But we got some fun stuff. We're definitely we have the NFL draft on tomorrow, so you're going to get live recorded coverage of the NFL draft. So you're going to already know before the show even comes out who gets picked, but we're going to do it live on the air when, have the music and everything. So we just like to have a little bit of fun. We have the Kentucky Derby this week as well, and we do our Derby predictions, which I always lose.
Well, shocker.
You're
wrong on a bet.
I look at the 90-1 odds and I'm like, oh, that's who I want.
No one that watches this show should be surprised. Even though I'm giving you a ton of credit last year for Texas A&M almost maybe coming close, but they did. All right, Beef. Thank all the people out there. I changed it up a little bit. I put some new people in the list. I'm hoping that some of those new folks are listening or will list on the podcast version.
Yeah, thanks so much to John McGee, William Lecoe, everyone in the Facebook group, especially Nelson Wilhite for all his help, editing, and support. JP Priester, everyone on Seldom Used Reserve, Sluggo Podcast, John Chansey, and each and every one of you who listens, likes, and shares and participates in the show. We truly do love the comments and appreciate them very much. On behalf of that guy, Marty, Seldom Used Reserve Coleman, I am Casey the Beef Creek, and thanks so much for joining us on Sluggo. We'll see you next week.
Get your Spurtles.
I think we're done here.